Okay, good morning everyone. Thanks for joining. I hope everyone's well. I've got the pleasure today of hosting this session on building resilience within your online store. I'm being joined by Iris and Matthias from BigCommerce and Nosto.
Hi everyone.
Hi everyone.
Hi guys. So really looking forward to going over the different elements of how you can improve your UX across, well, we're going to be touching upon from homepage to search all the way through to add to cart, so the full mobile UX. My name's Nick Hamer. I'm from Findologic. I've been at Findologic a year and a half. I'm head of sales, and I'll be going over actionable guidelines to on-site search optimization and how you can incorporate AI into search.
Hi, I'm Matthias. I'm the head of international business development for Nosto, working just 2 years and 4 months for Nosto, actually for roughly 6 years in personalizations, and I'm delighted to talk on personalization and how audio was a key difference for you.
Awesome. And hi everyone. Pleasure to be here today. My name is Iris Schiefer and I manage technology partnerships for EMEA at BigCommerce, one of the fastest growing SaaS e-commerce platforms in Europe. And I am going to be rounding off our presentation today, talking a little bit more about best practices for optimizing the checkout and also mitigating cart abandonment, both prior to and at the checkout stage.
Thanks guys. So that will be the order. We will start with myself discussing search. So let's crack on. So I will be discussing the actionable guidelines to on-site search optimization and sort of Findologic best practices across search landing pages, and also navigation within those pages, and how you can deploy AI into that search mechanism as well. So first off, search in general. Just to give you some statistics on why search is important. If they can't find it, they can't buy it. So it's really important that they have the most seamless experience for search that you can possibly provide. So a really important stat here, on average, 30% of users interact with the search bar. That's a massive proportion of users within your website. And of those 30%, the conversion rate is normally 3 or 4 times higher than your standard website CR. So it's pivotal. You've got that really seamless search experience that obviously drives that higher conversion rate and engagement within the website. Just another couple of statistics from a Baymard study, testing 19 of the e-commerce leading websites. What we can see here is 60% of e-commerce websites are unable to return relevant results on really common synonyms. So backpack and rucksack, for example, really simple stuff that gets left behind in search. 27% of sites won't yield useful results if users misspell just one character within a search term, which again seems a really simplistic part of search, but you'd be surprised how many people are neglecting just these simple spelling mistakes that most people do when they're typing quickly. And also 68% of sites do not have in contextual help when typing, so really simplistic search drop down with no categories, product suggestions, content being brought in, etc. So I think in general, we see around 85% of clients neglect search, and there's a real opportunity for people to enhance their search UX and make sure they're utilising that to the maximum capabilities they can. So I'm going to go through the different elements of the Findologic tech stack and what we believe are best practices in search. Hopefully this gives you an overview of sort of where you can drive little tweaks on search and where you can really enhance the whole UX across search. I'm going to use this as an example pour moi throughout my slides. In my opinion, this is one of the slickest UXs that Findologic have deployed, so please feel free to log in whilst I'm talking here and just have a play around on the Pour Moi website to get a gauge of the different elements we're talking about here on the screenshots. But first and foremost, the first most important fact on search is actually having an overlay. So a lot of websites, particularly SMBs, will have no search experience at all. So the user will click on the search and just type, and then you have to submit, and there's no interaction at all. So the first thing is actually having an overlay that appears on search. Secondly, is utilizing desktop space rather than utilizing a mobile search overlay on desktop. So what we see in general is everyone's thinking mobile first these days. Mobile was the big topic sort of 8-9 years ago when growth first started. And what you'll find is people are replicating search overlays onto desktop, which doesn't really utilize the space. So what we do at Findologic is treat mobile and desktop completely separately and utilize the space on desktop because you've got a much bigger screen, obviously. So it's really important you utilize the space and have a completely different approach to mobile. So here is a screenshot of our sort of standard approach. I'll just take you through what we think our best practices are. Firstly, first touch interaction. Over the last 5 or 6 years, a lot of search providers have only been showing a search overlay after the first 3 characters. What we strongly recommend is a first touch interaction whereby even when a user hasn't typed in or started typing a keyword, you show what we call global recommendations. So that will be the top sort of 15, 20 search terms on your website. And then obviously we strategize what products are best to appear. So it could be most frequent sellers, high margin products, etc. Or let the algorithm determine what's best. But it's really important you've got those high predominant products that a high proportion of your users are clicking on. And even if they don't need to type anything, they can just have that option to just click on it straight away and minimize typing and touch points essentially. The second element after the first click is when the user starts typing to deploy what we call autocomplete functionality, which is really useful on mobile as well. Obviously, if you've got huge thumbs like myself and you struggle to type on the phones, you want to get to submit the search as quickly as possible. So really good to just have that autocomplete function where you can just submit the search at minimum fuss. Also very useful, obviously, on desktop as well. You can just submit enter after 3 or 4 characters. And then as the user starts typing, we'll bring in more contextual pieces on the left-hand side. So sort of a filter look and feel, if you like. And this will be user specific. So based on that user's browsing session, you'll have top search suggestions for that user based on what they've browsed. You can bring in specific categories based on keywords. Any elements down here are possible to filter in and give more contextual relevance to that user. And another element here that's really up and coming is linking content and imagery to keywords. So in our back end, if you've got, for example, promotions on your homepage carousel, it could be 3 for 2 on dresses, for example. You can upload that into the back-end UI, link it to a keyword and have this self-populate in the search bar, normally on the top left, but it's all fully customizable. And this gives a real link between content and keywords, and obviously the user can redirect to that specific sale page or relevant promotion. And yeah, in terms of the product recommendation element of things, very flexible here. Worth noting, we can do this both bespoke builds or in a sort of standard API process, so we can just feed all the data in. So we're quite flexible on integrations. But yeah, what we recommend is utilizing the space, as I mentioned earlier, on desktop search overlays. It depends on the vertical, to be honest, how many products we recommend. But if there's a vertical that's really heavily image-led, you'd obviously want the images a lot bigger. So dresses, flowers, for example, anything that's visually appealing, you want to obviously show off that imagery within the search overlay. And essentially anything that's provided to us in a data feed, we can show here and bring in more relevance. So star ratings, for example, discounted prices, sales roundels, new in, for example. It's really flexible. You can even put in sort of stuff like add to cart buttons, which completely skips the landing pages or the product pages, and you just go straight to cart instantly. So yeah, highly recommend no more than sort of 10 products on a search overlay is one of our best practices on desktop. Moving on, sticking to, well, once a user submitted their search, it's really important you've got a fully optimized search landing page. Worth noting here that we also try and replicate across both search and category pages. So what we tend to find is a lot of category pages have a much better UX than search, and search is often neglected when you compare category page versus search page. So the idea is whether a user goes via search or category, they get the same experience with enriched filters, for example, and it can sometimes be completely different on category and search pages. What we see as a trend in the UK at the moment is a mobile first approach on desktop landing pages. So I've got a stat here at the top, 45% of the top 100 websites in the UK have moved from sort of legacy left-hand side navigation to a more mobile-centric, centered approach. So as you can see on the screenshot here, you've got central filters that stick to the top of the page as a user scrolls down. And just to give you some examples here, yeah, M&S, Asda, a New Look, some of the top 10 websites have already transitioned over. And this seems to be the trend that most websites are moving towards over the last couple of years in particular. The idea of sticky filters, which essentially means the filters stick to the top of the page when a user scrolls down. Yeah, back in the day, I'm sure everyone was used to having to scroll down through 100 products, and you'll have the left-hand side filters at the top of the page, and then you get sort of halfway down scrolling through products, and you think, oh, I can't refine my search. So the idea here is that users have access to the option of filtering and refining their search at any given time. So yeah, sort of different approaches for mobile and desktop, obviously due to the amount of space. I'll come on to mobile UX in a later slide, but yeah, the idea here is on desktop, if a user scrolls down, you can see here that the filters will stick to the header of the page, and you'll always have that option to refine the search at any given point with drop-down filters. What this also does is open up more space for product recommendations down the left-hand side. So you'll often find that users can get an extra column of products down the left-hand side, which is also useful. On mobile, slightly different approach, as I mentioned, due to space, but what we have is a sticky filter button, essentially. So you see on the right-hand side here, a refine button. As the user starts scrolling down, we highly recommend having a sticky filter button whereby when the user presses that button, off-canvas filters come on from a separate page. And again, I'll come on to that in a second, but yeah, a really small filter button that's easily accessible for users as well. Yeah, and well, another thing to add upon here, actually, sorry, the last bullet point here is, yeah, you'll often hit a page where there's 10, 12, 15 different options to filter, and it's really confusing for users to go through all the different filter options. What we recommend is having the core filters predominant on the page, and then having a separate filter button that has the option of other filters. So essentially putting your less predominant filters in a separate bit so that the user doesn't get confused and only the core filters are featuring on a specific category page or search page based on the relevance of the search term. One more element I wanted to add here, which I didn't put on the slide, to be honest, was around the search landing pages and the options you have on product recommendations. So in particular fashion, so what you'll find is a lot of SKUs are replicated. So you could have different color dresses, the exact same dress, but different colors, different sizes, etc. So what we highly recommend also, which Paul haven't actually got on their UX, but we've got this hover functionality, which you can have a color swatch that basically you hover over the colors and it goes through every product image on that color on a hover basis. And that's really good and minimizes replicating products across a search page as well. And what we can also do, which a lot of fashion clients are currently deploying, is showing the available sizes underneath the product when a user hovers on the search landing page. So rather than going to a product page and looking at the different sizes that are available, you instantly see which sizes are available when you hover over the product on the landing page. So again, the idea there is trying to minimize touch points for the user. They can see that size is available and they can instantly go to that product and sort of hopefully purchase. Moving on to the next slide. Mobile UX. So I mentioned on slide 1, it's really important in our point of view to treat desktop and mobile UX completely separately due to device space. So in general, mobile UX is really tough for users to navigate around. You've got different elements of mobile UX. What we've done is split it into 3 core pillars to accommodate this. What you'll find is 63% of people will abandon a product or website as a result of preventable usability issues. So we're essentially trying to decompartmentalize the mobile UX and make it really seamless and easy to follow. So the 3-pillar approach is something we strongly recommend as a best practice. Search being the experience a user has when a user clicks on the search bar. So you want a full screen overlay that is really clear and concise. Obviously, you can see on the left-hand side a completely different approach to a desktop where we've got all that option for imagery and utilizing the space. Here, we find imagery is actually too small to look at. So after testing, we leave imagery completely out of the smart search and make it really clear, concise, with a really clear call to action. We also include voice search capability in the search bar. So it's a similar experience to anyone on WhatsApp. When you send a WhatsApp message, you hold down, you speak into the phone, and it will auto-populate the keyword for you. At the minute, this hasn't actually caught on that much in the UK. So in the US, there's higher penetration of around, I think, 35–40%. In the UK, it's nearer 5 to 10. So I think this is going to be an up-and-coming tech that everyone's using in 3 or 4 years when we catch up with the US. But yeah, interesting to see how that develops as well. So that's the sort of search, keeping that all to one segment. And then once a user submits the search, we have the browsing element. So what we tend to do in the browsing element is we have a container above the product recommendations with core filters. And I'll come onto this container here with the pink drop downs as well, because this is our AI technology, which, to be honest, drives the biggest value. So I'll come onto that in a separate slide and show you how that functions as well. But essentially keeping that browsing to an instant touch point here and product recommendations with that sticky filter option when a user, so there's the refined button there, and as the user scrolls down, that will come as a button that we mentioned earlier. And then most importantly, which really drives engagement and stops users getting frustrated, is the navigate section. So what we tend to find is a lot of retailers are building in the filter functionality in this browse section. So if a user wants to refine their search, they'll click on the filter button, and then they'll potentially have a drop-down filter menu where in this page, and all of the product recommendations will be pushed right to the bottom of that page. And what that means is, obviously, you've got to apply your filters, and then it's really awkward to submit the filter search, and then you have to scroll through all the filters, and then you get to the product page. Obviously, everyone has different mechanisms, but what we find is the easiest and best way to utilize a best practice UX on mobile is having what we call off-canvas filters, which is this navigate section. So having a completely separate page on the mobile that comes onto the screen, and having a really clear apply button so that when a user applies those filters, it goes back to the browse section with those filters applied. So the user can't get confused with filtration and applying the refinements they need on the search. So really important you have that off-canvas filter section as a separate compartment, if you like. Again, really, with minimal space, it's really important to keep everything minimalistic. I think that's an in-word at the minute, minimalism. But yeah, really keeping it really slick and easy to follow and not confusing users. Coming on to the AI piece. So in general, what we tend to find is search terms are very generic and vague. So just to give you some ideas of how vague we find search terms. So 85% of searches only consist of 1 or 2 words. So users aren't putting in general an exact match to a product. 66% of all search queries are made up of the top 100 search terms, and 50% are normally really vague brand or category searches. So what this means we can do is condense a large, if you look at the top 150 in terms of volume across your website, that will be a big bulk of the core search terms that people are using. So what this allows us to do is take those core search terms and feed them into an AI algorithm that crunches that data. And this is our AI technology that we've developed based on, how the technology works is we've got AI technology that profiles users based on their behavior on your website. So products they click on, categories they click on, brand affinity, etc. And also obviously keyword history as well, what keywords they've searched for. And we build a profile, we look at those 150 top keywords, or it doesn't need to be 150 to be honest, but yeah, the top bulk of keywords. We feed those into an algorithm, and the idea here is to profile the user and determine the best UX for that user based on their historic history. So yeah, some screenshot examples here. Internally, we call these skills, but they're essentially different UXs to try and engage the user and give them the user experience they're after. So the user will submit the search. Based on our profiling, we will determine sort of what the best UX is here. So I mentioned that container earlier. This is all fully dynamic, so this will be based on the user's preferences, what they like. So in this case, if you search for a bra on Pour Moi, you'll get all of the different types of bra ranked on what the user's interests are. Additionally, if you search for a type of brand, we've got here, this is this sort of scrolling technique. So there's not just free products there. You can scroll through and get different types of products you're after. But the idea here is to inspire, guide, or let the user discover what they're looking for vague search terms. And it's all done dynamically with AI technology. What you'll also see here is what we're trying to do. So obviously Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, if you go on your Facebook app now, what you'll see is you'll have an instant touch point on most of the pages throughout social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And what we find is users are they always click on the stories at the top, and you'll see that there's always this sort of instant touch point that Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter have deployed, normally stories. And obviously they've got the best UX developers on the planet, and they know how to drive engagement. So what the idea of Lisa AI is we find that users are subconsciously used to social media UX, and you know, I'm on social media myself. I'll go on Facebook and just click on stories straight away. So what you'll find is the idea behind this is replicating a social look and feel and functionality, but getting an instant touch point on vague search terms. So the idea is getting an instant touch point. The user will see this straight away and seamlessly go, oh, okay, what type of bras do I like? India bras. Scroll through, you click on the hearts that you like, and the product recommendations on every touch point will instantly reflect what that user is looking for. So it's a great way of making product recommendations as accurate as possible, as quickly as possible. And just to give you an idea of the sort of uplift that this AI can drive, so feel free to reach out. We've got a full case study from Pour Moi on this. But yeah, in general, we tend to see around a 10 to 14% uplift in conversions. In this case, we saw 11%. With our merchandising logic as well, and algorithmic learnings, we get a 10% increase in average order value. And what we did see in this instance was a 21% increase in sessions from when they deployed before versus after. So yeah, really exciting results. We've seen our Lisa technology has been out for roughly a year and a half now, and yeah, we tend to see in this ballpark 10 to 14%. So it's really exciting to see that this Instagram, Facebook look and feel is really driving value, and yeah, something we strongly recommend you looking into and sort of deploying within your website for that instant touch point on category and search pages. I hope that was useful. This is my section over on search and navigation, and we will have a question and answer section at the end, so feel free to submit any questions. But in the meantime, I will pass over to Matthias for his segment. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. So I'm going to talk today about audience segmentation and content personalization, and why you should consider that as one of the strategies in the next few months and not in the next few years. Before I do that, I have to hijack this just for a quick moment. If you have already heard it or not, we have actually acquired yesterday Stackler, the world's smartest visual content engine, just to empower again personalization with the user-generated content part and making it more authentic. So if you are interested, please come by our website and read more behind it. Okay, so moving on. Why content personalization? Why is it important? If you basically consider, why is Amazon and Netflix so successful, it's not necessarily just because of the budget that they have, but actually because they've been constantly building the customer experience around their customers for the last couple of years. So basically, when you put yourself in the shoes of a customer, if you own a website and you're interested in, let's say, Nike products, you're looking for Nike shoes, let's say the Air Max 90s, and then the content that you're getting served is potentially fashion for women's, or maybe toys for dogs, or garden products, it's not really supporting the experience that you're looking for. So what we at Nosto are trying to implement and trying to solve is we are basically helping also the customers to basically achieve a very Amazon similar customer experience optimization through content. And basically, when we move on to the next slide, the basement of content personalization starts with a good segmentation tool. So the data is already there today. You have the possibilities to analyze your customer behavior. You can basically segment different kind of life cycles, different kind of segments, to really understand what are my customers doing today, what are the products that they're looking, what are the products that they're adding, but also what are the products that they're buying. And when you basically then think about content personalization, how can you achieve a better customer experience? What we suggest our retailers is basically to build segmentations, for example, like where are the customers located? So what is the interaction from someone from London versus someone from Manchester? How are the people different from Berlin versus Munich? What are the AOVs? What are the click-in channels? Are they coming over email? Are they coming over an affiliate channel? If they're coming from Google Shopping, what is the bounce rate? And trying to identify areas where you can basically do an optimization with content personalization to reach a small size of customer group, but to have a big impact coming out of it. These three examples here that you can see is just really a small tip of the iceberg. A good segmentation tool like Nosto is giving you more options than 40 to 50 segmentation criteria or filters, how you can basically segment your customers. But that's really the baseline where you should be starting from. And the numbers are actually speaking for itself. So in the recent tests that we have done over different kind of verticals, what we can see on average, and of course it depends on the segments and the verticals that you're targeting, but you can expect a 1.3 conversion rate increasement on average versus content that is not personalized. And you don't necessarily have to invest a lot or hire more people because the data is already there. The automation tools are also available, but I think it starts with data. And that is usually what is deprioritized by brands that, it has been working so far well, so why should we change a running system? But if we move on, what I want to show you is how could the future look like? And you probably have seen yourself also on different brands where the website is dynamically changing from the content. When you look on the screenshots on the right-hand side, so at the top, it's one of our customers' hats, where basically the retailer doesn't have any data yet about their customers. So they're promoting men products, but also women products. And once then the user is interacting with the website, with the content, with the products, potentially showing affinities to certain brands or categories, the website is then in real time dynamically changing the content to serve more the interest points of your customers. So on the bottom left, you can see that for the segment men, the content is then orientating around men products. I'm going to show you on the next slide in a moment how that could look like. And then for the women segment, basically the content is exchanged to women promotions, women products, women discounts to really surface the interest of your customers. Some other segments that you could be looking at would be, for example, differentiating people who are first-time visitors. So just browsing, getting to know your brand, comparing prices, or potentially coming from a certain city, who might be interested in seasonal clothing. So another example, if you're selling yoga products and potentially outdoor products, then that could be also a great segment for you to focus on to serve yoga-orientated promotions to the yoga segment and outdoor-orientated promotions into content for the outdoor segment to really differentiate the experience. What you can also, for example, use as a first, let's say, campaign optimization is to look at customers that have already made a purchase. They're returning to the site. They are interested potentially in more products, to then promote, let's say, products that they have forgotten in the first purchase, to really surface, let's say, the data that you have, and knowing, let's say, from an AI perspective, what other products should that customer be interested in, but potentially missed out on the first visit. And then you could also be looking at different kind of campaigns to promote content and discounts and let's say promotions to people that are about to buy. Always with the focus that you're not eating up your margin, and really like positioning content at the right time to the right segment where it's needed. So if you want to use voucher codes, let's say, or have discounts or sale campaigns on certain products, maybe think about not showing these kind of messages to every customer, but only to those segments that are about to buy and potentially just need the last push moving forward to actually complete the purchase. Again, just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more use cases, and I'm happy to go into more details at the end or in a separate session. If we move on, this is, let's say, a classical example how content personalization could look like. So every retailer has, let's say, the different kind of positions on the homepage where they are promoting products, and you don't necessarily, again, have to invent the wheel new. The systems are there, the data exists today with your customers, but then very easily you could be analyzing through the segmentation tool which segments drive the most AOV, which segments drive your most revenue, where do you have the highest bounce rates, and start doing hypothesis testings with different kind of elements of content personalization to see, can you get the customer more engaged and can you separate yourself from the competition? It's the same website, but as you can see, the experience men is tailored more about men products. The segment woman is tailored more about the woman products. And you can really break this down in any kind of vertical and any kind of products. You could be having then also recommendations there where once the customer has been interacting with content around the men's segments, the products that you might be promoting at the front of the homepage is then actually filled by that segment information and more orientated on a one-to-one personalization for your customers. When we move on, there are also other ways of using content personalization. So on this screenshot, when you look at the text in the black box, you could also use geolocation for your segmentation and content personalization to target unique messages or even promotions. In this case, getting the customers interested if the product is available near his next store, potentially driving the on-site customer into the offline stores to potentially then continue the sales process. But whatever the content is here is really down to the retailer. It could be videos, it could be newsletter signups, it could be countdown timers, it could be voucher codes, it could be the check of availability around you. So there's a lot of, let's say, flexibility on the content personalization aspect, and it doesn't have to be always discounts. Another example would be the example from, I believe, Rurok, if you move on. Oh, okay, that's the next slide. So here's another example for FOMO messages. So when you look at this screenshot, below the add to cart button, you see the two boxes with the dashed lines. One is creating urgency, which is then basically linked to your inventory. And the other one is basically promoting a voucher code for a limited time. And again, I think the clue here is to use the segment and the life cycle to really differentiate, where is my customer right now at? Is he about to buy? Is he only surfing and browsing? Is he potentially coming back? And then using these kind of information points to trigger the right content to push the customer to the next stage in the life cycle. Again, you're quite flexible with this, but the ultimate goal here is to start using the data and start testing out content campaigns, if or if not, they can support the segments in your customers moving forward. Next slide, please. So here is an example of what content personalization can do. I can't promise that these numbers are going to be replicatable for every single store and every single brand or vertical. However, if you think about how easy, let's say, certain kind of optimization campaigns can be executed on your website and what kind of results can be achieved, I think it should give every marketeer basically the opportunity to think about, shall we continue with the current strategy or should we be more open for testing and hypothesis testing? So Rurok, one of our customers, had the problem that over Google Shopping, they're generating a lot of bounce rates. So they're paying expensive traffic to get to the site, but then they have a low output. And the assumption here was that we said, let's test out the Amazon principle, that when you come over paid channel to Amazon, you're showing alternative products for that segment only from the same category. So we've been testing this across multiple verticals. This is just one of the successful cases that we wanted to show. So on the right-hand side, you see the original PDP. It's the normal product, no alternative recommendations mentioned. And on the left-hand side, you can actually see alternative products from the same category, giving the customer straight away an alternative if he's not satisfied. We don't know why this is the case, but sadly, when customers come to your site over Google Shopping and they're not happy with what they see, instead of continuing browsing your store, they just click the back button, go back to Google Shopping and potentially end up with your competition. But by implementing this kind of campaign, which didn't take longer than 30 minutes from the Nosto backend, we were actually able to achieve some really great results. So the bounce rate on the campaign improved by 19%. The conversion rate on that campaign improved by 67%. The average order value increased by 25%, and the average visit value increased by 109%. Now, if I'm able to get basically my point across, what I really want you to think about is, what if you would be starting to test out content personalizations, treating your customers differently on the segments that drive the highest output. So not really personalizing everyone, but the specific segments. And what kind of impact can you achieve by using the data that you already have today and the automation tools that are out there on the market, for example, from Nosto. And yeah, so that was basically it. So I hope I was able to get you a little bit interested. I'm looking forward to the questions at the end of the session, but I'm going to hand over to Iris to talk about the checkout process and optimizations there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matthias. So we are now going to move on to the checkout part of the process. So in the last half hour, we've shared some really great tips on maximizing traffic, basket size, conversion, all that great stuff. So you've got your customers to the site, they filled their basket, and you may think that at this stage, all the hard work has been done. Unfortunately, shoppers are more likely to abandon their cart at checkout versus any other stage of their journey. So as an industry average, cart abandonment tends to hover around about the 70% mark, and about half of these dropouts occur at the checkout stage. So we're going to spend the next 10 minutes or so focusing on why that is and how you can mitigate some of these dropouts, both at the checkout stage, but also prior to checkout. So on this slide, you can see that I've listed out some of the top reasons, and these aren't in any particular order, why consumers abandon their purchases. And one of the key takeaways here is that preventing cart abandonment at checkout actually needs to start way before the customer reaches that checkout page. So one reason that tends to crop up in almost every survey on the subject is site performance. Now, site speed and site performance are obviously universal across all areas of the site, not just the checkout. So this could include a number of factors like, for example, slow page load times, unexpected crashes, your call to action buttons not working as they're supposed to. All these things really don't inspire confidence in shoppers and can cause a lot of frustration in that shopper journey. Site security is another huge factor. So BigCommerce actually wrote a report together with Klarna last year where we surveyed 2,000 UK consumers on the key drivers and detractors for them at each stage of the shopping process. And 75% of respondents said that they would abandon their shopping if they did not trust the site's security. Now, the primary concern for a lot of those shoppers is putting their payment details into a site that could be hacked. So this is where a SaaS platform really does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of PCI compliance and data security. But when we're talking about trust, we're also talking about trust in terms of, am I actually going to receive my product, and when? Is what I'm getting what was advertised to me on the site? Will it meet my needs? And so on and so forth. Consumers also expect consistent performance and experience across multiple channels. So Nick, you touched on this earlier when you talked about sort of like optimizing like for different different channels from the search perspective. So in the UK, around a third of all e-commerce transactions are made through mobile. So depending on your industry and the demographic you're targeting, this could be higher or lower. But either way, it's extremely important to design your entire consumer journey with mobile in mind, which also includes the checkout. So more on this in just a moment. The next thing I want to focus on is shipping and payment options, as well as promo codes. And for this piece, I'd like to revisit our discussion on product page design, which we talked, both Nick and Matthias talked about earlier. So the site that I've used in my example screenshots today on the next slide is Gill Marine. So Gill Marine are a specialist provider of sports and sailing equipment. And if you have your mobile phone handy, which I imagine most of you do, I encourage you to visit their site, which is gb.gillmarine.com or www.gillmarine.com if you're not visiting from the UK, and follow along with me as we go through these steps. So I'm gonna pause for a couple of seconds and just give you a moment to navigate to the site if you're choosing to follow along. Cool, so if you have decided to follow along on the site, you'll probably notice that you've been presented with a 10% discount pop-up encouraging you to sign up for the newsletter. And some folks may be presented with a unique discount banner at the top of the page, which is based on the type of audience segmentation that Matthias highlighted earlier. So this could depend where you're visiting from, it could depend on device, it could depend on your demographic. That's where that kind of segmentation really comes into play with personalizing the journey. And I know a lot of you on the line today, or a lot of retailers in general, are hesitant to provide bulk discount codes because they tend to get shared online and they can cut into your bottom line significantly if too many people are using them. At the same time, this can help drive traffic to your site, and not offering these codes can lead shoppers to look elsewhere. So one suggestion that I would have here is to use single-use codes that are unique to the customer. For example, with the newsletter sign up for a new customer, either that or restrict your promotions to certain lines or conditions. It really depends what you're looking to achieve, right? So for example, if you're looking to attract new customers, then you might want to have just one bulk discount code that works on all lines. Whereas if you're looking to foster loyalty or get customers more engaged, you might want to personalize those codes a little bit more. I'd also suggest surfacing these as early as possible and targeting users while they're still in that sort of explore page of the journey. I see a couple of folks are asking for the website name again. So it is either, if you're in the UK, it's gb.gillmarine.com or www.gillmarine.com. So hopefully folks will be able to follow along. If there's any problems, let me know. So I'm talking a little bit more about the product pages. For example, the screenshot that you can see here, or if you're on the site, there's actually a lot you can do at this stage to mitigate some of those checkout abandonment issues. So the first tip that I have here is to ensure you provide as much information about the product as you possibly can. So that could be high resolution images, rich product descriptions, availability, sizing charts, that kind of thing. This is also an ideal place to surface reviews and social proof. And this comes back to that trust issue that we identified earlier on. It's also essential to indicate availability and shipping timeline. So you can see from my screenshot here that free delivery is available on all orders. Some of you might want to set minimum thresholds for free delivery, or if you're shipping internationally, indicate any and all associated fees and an accurate delivery time frame. Some folks might choose to sort of add some extra into like the actual product price in order to offer lower free delivery thresholds. It really just depends on your model and where you tend to be shipping to and what's right for your business. Additionally, you can see that Gilmarine have highlighted some of the payment options that will be available to me at the checkout. So for example, here you can see PayPal and Klarna. So as a consumer, I already know that I'll have a variety of options available to me. The overarching message here is that transparency is key. The more information you can offer your customer at this stage of the process, the more likely it is that they will complete their purchase. You're also likely hitting two birds with one stone here, in that you'll be reducing return rates and boosting the number of positive reviews, as the customer knows exactly what to expect when their shipment arrives. So moving on to the final stage of the journey, which is the piece that you've actually been waiting for, which is the checkout page itself. So if you remember from my first slide, one of the top reasons for abandoning the checkout is a long and confusing checkout process. So here you can see that it's a simple 4-step process. We have a clear idea of where we are in the checkout flow and how many steps remain. You'll also notice that for both desktop and mobile, checkout is limited to a single optimized page. This is extremely important. I would recommend to always keep the checkout to less than 5 steps. The more steps you add and the more information the customer has to fill out, the less likely they are to complete that purchase. So I can see a summary of my basket on this side, and this is what we call a perpetual cart. And it means I can easily go back and edit my bag if I wanted to, for example, if I didn't quite meet the free shipping barrier or wanted to add a promo code. And if you're still following along on your mobile, you'll see this perpetual cart floating at the bottom of the page as you scroll along. Next tip that I have is always to offer a guest checkout. So you can offer incentives to create an account, whether it's at this stage or earlier in the journey, like we saw with the newsletter sign up, or maybe you have a point scheme that you like to make available to existing customers. But the key message here is don't force it on your customers. Give them the option to check out as a guest. So if they're a returning customer, I would offer auto-populate features to complete billing and shipping information. In this case, shipping was free on all orders, as we saw earlier. But if it isn't, make sure that you are clearly indicating shipping costs and delivery times at this stage. You can also offer expedited shipping options at an extra fee if you so choose, or if that's the demand that you are seeing from customers. And the last piece is payment options. So as we saw earlier, there were a variety of payment options for me to choose from on this site. And if you're selling internationally, super important to ensure that you can provide local alternative payment methods, as well as meeting local delivery preferences. Now, depending on your volumes, you might choose to have a separate country-specific site optimized to this, or you can also use a specialist cross-border solution, which will translate your site and offer those options to consumers shopping in those regions. And that's it from me today. So hopefully there were a few helpful tips to take away from this session. Really coming back to those points that Nick and Matthias also raised earlier around transparency and minimalism. So anything you can do to reduce friction for your customers is almost certainly going to help push down those cart abandonment rates. And Nick, I think we've got around 10 minutes left for Q&A. So I'm going to pass back over to you to wrap things up. Yeah, moving on to questions. Has anyone, if you've got any questions, please feel free to submit the questions in the chat, and for any of us, we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Maybe in the meantime, whilst the questions are coming in, just a quick hint or idea, or what you can consider backing up Iris's example about the voucher code that you can see on Gilmarine. A lot of times the retailers are afraid that this voucher code is misused, but it's very easily to get around it. Number one, don't show this banner to people that already are signed up for the newsletter. Number two, as an advice, make a countdown, make it limited to 1 or 2 hours max, and it's always linked to one usage only. Like this, you will minimize the voucher codes getting misused. If somebody wants that voucher code, he will continue with his purchase, and that's it. And you're not misusing or opening up the system for people spreading that voucher code on the internet. Just as an advice, it's a very easy fix, and again with a good segmentation tool that is achievable in just a couple of setup points.
All right, thanks, Matthias. Okay, we have a question from Lily. Thanks for your question, Lily. This is possible, and I think this is something Nosto do, correct me if I'm wrong, Matas. In terms of Findologic, we're actually moving away due to GDPR, so we're moving away from cookie-based data. So everything we do is done based on keyword understandings and done in session. So from a Findologic perspective, that isn't what we do due to GDPR, but I'm sure Matas can maybe go into some detail on third-party cookie learnings as well.
So this is basically what Nosto does. So we have a patented AI that is analyzing the whole website experience, so everything that's happening on site, from the behavioral of the customer to the transactional data from the customer. We're then putting it into segments to give you back the data that is happening today. You can analyze it with your team over reports. You don't have to have a doctor's degree to understand it. So it's made to ease for everyone to use, let's say. And then that's basically the baseline for you to connect customer experiences to those segments. So we are basically having an open API. So different technology providers can dock on to our segmentation tool, pull that information and reuse it in their, let's say, tech stack. Yeah, we have a light version also with Findologic, and that is definitely getting continued and expanded. So if that's what you want to use on a search parameter to use the on-site data, that should be achievable. Yeah, that's basically what Nosto is about, making sure you understand your customers and then basically being able to build from one platform different kind of experiences without having to hire new people internally.
I think we've got two questions coming through in the Q&A for you as well, Nick. I think there's one here that when customers write in the search bar, which words are used to give suggestions? Is it the name of the product, the description, etc.?
So it's an algorithm. Thanks for the question. Sorry, I missed that one. Yeah, it's a mixture of different. So the core is firstly matching the keyword in. So that's the core sort of really easy technology. Then there's different elements that come in. So we've got a sort of mapping structure that builds in and matches to different keywords. So we've got essentially a database that learns on spelling mistakes, for example, different keystrokes that are coming in that aren't matching to a product, and then our algorithm will set rules based on, yeah, if we've got a lot of redirects that don't end on a specific search, for example, we'll build that in, and it takes note of that. So it's essentially a back-end mapping structure that we've got that builds into the search. It's an algorithm that's got sort of 7 or 8 different variables in it, to be honest. So many different aspects to take note of. But in terms of the relevance, obviously you've got the different elements down the left-hand side. So you've got, on a search basis, you'll have search suggestions. So we do top website search suggestions and then specific search suggestions for that user's browse as well. So you've got 2 different types, user suggestions and top website search suggestions. And then obviously you've got your category element, which is obviously easily mapped into categories as well. So different functionalities for each compartment of the search overlay, if that makes sense. Thank you for the question. Was there another question, Iris, that I missed?
Yeah, there's a couple more questions coming in. So we've just had one come in. Is it better to use different partners together on site, such as Nosto and Findologic together on a BigCommerce site, or use one partner for every element of the user journey? This is a good question.
Good question. Matas, you want to go for that one?
So I believe in the best in breed, which means you don't try to rebuild what already exists. You use the best technologies and then you try to connect the data silos. If you claim or you want to achieve everything and you can do everything from one hand, then certain areas will not get the focus and the investments and the support versus a company that is specialized in a certain topic. So we always try to connect with the best technologies. That's also why we're in partnerships with Findologic and BigCommerce. So my personal advice would be always look for a technology that doesn't just build its own data silo, but actually that is open or able to be connected with other providers. Yeah, the best in breed would be my suggestion.
Yeah, totally agree, Matas. So just to give you some context, Findologic and Nosto are partnered together, and we have many deals where we specialize in search functionality and Nosto will do the personalization piece because they've got that, I think we mentioned it earlier with Lily's question, third-party data, and we know they've got more enriched data on the personalization front, to be honest. So it's very much a case of best of breed search and best of breed personalization and bringing those elements together.
Yeah, and I can back that up as well from BigCommerce. Is really our USP as a e-com platform in the market, that kind of best of breed stacks versus those monolith suites approach. As Matthias said, no one provider can do everything well. They're not necessarily going to have the staff with expertise in that sort of specific technology, or like customer support who can help with those specific use cases. So nowadays, really easy to connect all those technologies via an API framework. So definitely, I think for everybody on this call, that would be the approach we'd go for.
Definitely.
So Nick, Iris, I have a question to both of you. I think that's going to be helpful for our listeners. There were a lot of tips that we gave, but knowing that the roadmaps are always pretty full and it's hard to prioritize the new projects, what would be one search advice that you would give Nick, or one checkout optimization that you would give Iris, that a retailer can very quickly adapt and most likely then already see the first kind of results driving the expected goal?
I'll go first, Iris, shall I? I think the key word there's quickly. So obviously these elements take a bit of time to build on the dev side. For a quick win, the most impact you can get is the search overlay. Either mobile and desktop, we can create that at the same time. That, in simple terms, creates the best uplift. And if you've got quite a simplistic search overlay, that will be the biggest quick win in terms of development. If you're looking for real core engagement and driving the best conversion rate you can, the AI piece would be the best, but that comes with some development time. So I'd say, the search overlay is a very simplistic way of enhancing search quickly.
Yeah, and for me, I would say if there's just one change that you can make to your checkout, regardless of which platform that you're using at the moment, is to have an optimized one-page checkout and reduce the number of steps to completing the checkout. Honestly, the biggest improvement you can make to your checkout in general is reducing friction in the process and shortening the time to the purchase. As I said earlier, every additional step or loading screen is going to reduce the chances of your customer completing their purchase. So that would be my suggestion.
Thanks, Matthias. I've got one question. I'm really interested in this, Iris, from a personal point of view. So I often get frustrated when websites try and force me to register. I was just wondering if you've got any data on the drop-off that causes and how it hampers the checkout process.
Yeah, so we've not done a study on this specifically as BigCommerce, but from other studies on the subject I've read, it seems to vary somewhere between the sort of 23 and 35% of consumers that state that they would abandon their purchase if they were forced to create an account. I have a lot of people come back to me and say, oh, for example, like Amazon doesn't offer a guest checkout, ASOS doesn't. And I do think these rates are affected a lot by the way the sort of account creation step is presented to the customer. So taking ASOS as an example, the checkout never actually mentions create an account. It just says existing customers versus are you new to ASOS? And if you're new, you still need to fill out all your details and create a password. So essentially create an account. But that detail page is kept very light. So it's only restricted to the information that you need to collect as part of the payment and shipping process anyway, even if you were checking out as a guest. I personally would always still recommend giving the option of a guest checkout. But regardless, I would think about how you phrase the sign up option to elicit a favorable response and increase those subscriber rates.
Okay, lovely, thank you. So there's one question for you, Matthias, then, and then is there any more questions from our viewers at all? Thanks, Sam. Matthias, one more question for you, and then we'll give a chance for any last questions, and then we can wrap up. Yeah, in terms of your tech stack, what would you say drives the highest engagement in terms of features?
It's hard to say. There's not this one answer because it depends on the strategies. It depends on how far the company has already started doing personalization, but also what is, let's say, the promotions that they might be doing, if there are any discounts, or what is the focus point. From all products, let's say the easiest executable and the one that you will see fastest in turning into ROI and delivering some numbers would be basically recommendations, so the one-to-one recommendation, setting up basically an eye that is then taking over the manual, let's say merchandising or setup that usually a lot of retailers do, and then basically serving the customer based on life cycle segment, based on have they been purchasing before, what have they added to the basket, to the customer at the right time, and then followed by bundles like shop the look campaigns, where, for example, 3 products are presented with one button. You can add all 3 of them. You can unticket, ticket, the number of products changes, the price adapts, and it's all with one click in the basket. I would say those are the ones that are the quickest. If you really want to have a quick fix, set up segmentations, analyze the data that you have already today to not do any kind of guesswork anymore, and really make decisions based on data. That would be the fastest, and then connect it to recommendations.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you. Okay, it looks like there are no more questions. Thank you everyone who dialed in. We really appreciate your time. Thank you, Iris and Matthias. It's been really interesting discussing everything with you. And yeah, take care. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.